It's a pleasure to be with you here today, and one of the issues we're going to be addressing is something that's becoming of greater importance every day, and that's illegal immigration. Many people don't understand what it is. Why is it taking place? Who funds it? Who stands to benefit from increasing illegal immigration? Well, we're going to take a look at those situations during this presentation. In previous generations, personal freedom, individual opportunity, these were the key elements in what drove legal immigration and the achievement of citizenship in this country. Today, welfare fraud, plus political and social manipulation conducted by tax-exempt, foundation-funded radicals attracts a flood of illegal aliens who are refusing to assimilate into our way of life. An unholy alliance of the religious radical left, ultra-liberal legal assistance organizations, socialist and communist organizations are attempting to dismantle our borders by promoting the concept of the global community or the global village. This to be used as a method to achieve a token equitable distribution of wealth and world peace. Years ago, when someone mentioned the New World Order or the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, or the Bilderbergers, the average person didn't know what you were talking about. But now their agenda is carried by the public media. The average person is overwhelmed by the information and says, I don't understand, it's too scary, and I don't want to get involved. Our border region is beset today with a series of delicate and very complex problems. Among them are the immense influx of illegal aliens, the impact of the UNIDO, NAFTA, and GATT treaties, multilingualism and multiculturalism being taught in the public schools, national security problems, the implementation of liberation theology, political correctness, and a strained infrastructure. These problems could potentially become fuses for a revolution within our very borders. At stake is the preservation of the 1,950-mile-long border between the United States and Mexico. This border not only separates two countries, it separates two cultures, two economies, two completely different ways of thinking. To the average American, the growing revolutionary problems that we have on the border could possibly lead to a Sandinista-style type revolution in the American Southwest. Let's take a look at the disappearing border. The key to dissolving our borders rests in illegal immigration. The United States and the other developed nations of the free world are being burdened by an expanding invasion of illegal aliens who are taking over many of the quota systems, many of the jobs, and many of the social structures in the free world. According to the United States, or should I say the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Sadako Ogata, 23+ million illegal aliens, or refugees as they call them, are on the move throughout the world at any one given time. Their primary targets, the Western Hemisphere, primarily Canada and the United States, and Western Europe. How do these illegal aliens arrive? Well, they walk and swim across the border with Mexico. They hide in secret compartments in trucks and cars and airplanes. They are brought in by Chinese snakeheads. For example, the Golden Venture, which sank off the coast of New York City. Others engage in sham marriages. Many others fail to leave when their passports, visas, and work permits expire. According to the U.S. Immigration Service, over one-half of these individuals fail to leave at the end of their permit. Many more use false, counterfeit, stolen, or multiple identities to enter the United States and the free world and stay. Who are these people who make up this surging mass of humanity? Well, some are refugees. Some are fleeing wars and conflicts in their home countries. Some are political and religious refugees seeking asylum. Some are peasants seeking work. Others are middle-class workers seeking to improve their quality of life. Others are felons on the run from crime, seeking a new place to establish a criminal life. Others are drug smugglers, illegal alien smugglers. Some are agent provocateurs, terrorists, and political activists. The proponents of the sanctuary movement and other illegal immigration reformists remind us that the Statue of Liberty welcomes all peoples. Yes, that's true, but the inscription on the base of the Statue of Liberty is not official U.S. policy on immigration. To understand how this situation has reached such a serious level, let's take a look at recent history. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed into law a precedent-setting immigration reform bill. That reform bill eliminated the national origins quotas. It provided more exceptions for refugees and asylees outside of the quota system. And it loosened quotas for Asians, Latin Americans, and Africans to enter the United States. In 1975, Marine General Leonard F. Chapman, who was the former Commandant of the Marine Corps, was named as the Director of the Immigration Naturalization Service under the Department of Justice. And he stated, illegal immigration is out of control. This is 1975. The following year, he said that there were between 6 and 8 million illegal aliens residing in the United States, with the figure rising by 1/2 to 1 million each year since he had taken office. In 1976, Leonel Castillo replaced General Chapman as the head of the Immigration Naturalization Service. He headed that department under President Carter. Castillo regularly attempted to discount the seriousness of the problem by claiming that only 3 to 6 million illegal aliens resided in the United States. The Independent Council on Immigration and Refugee Policy, established by Congress in 1978, estimated that at least 8 million illegal aliens were residing in the United States. The Independent Counsel for the Immigration and Naturalization Service, Maurice C. Inman, announced that the annual figure of 12 to 15 million was a more realistic figure. And finally, the very liberal Environmental Foundation stated that they estimated about 20 million illegal aliens were residing in the United States. Well, it makes little difference which of these figures are correct. The figures are all staggering. The numbers are actually much higher. When you speak to immigration officers who work in the field, they'll tell you that 4 to 5 times this many actually enter the United States every year. It makes little difference which figures are correct. We still have a serious problem. Keep in mind that these figures only deal with illegal immigration. Legal immigration has continued to expand by unprecedented numbers. During the 1980s, the United States absorbed in excess of 9 million legal aliens. Sometimes we take 1 to 2 times as many illegal and legal aliens than the rest of the world combined. That's each year. The United States has been and remains the most liberal country when it comes to immigration issues. However, this must change soon. We must ask ourselves this question: is it in our best interest to allow and encourage uncontrolled legal and illegal immigration at these unprecedented numbers? I believe that having a tight control on immigration is in the best interest of a positive spirit of nationalism. Nothing is wrong with upholding standards of conduct. Nothing is wrong with having an official language, practicing our nation's unique culture, and expecting rapid assimilation of selected immigrants. Switzerland, Germany, France, England, Italy, Canada, Hong Kong, and Holland are currently preparing legislation to control illegal and legal immigration. During mid-August this month, in France, in the last 2 weeks, in excess of 3,000 illegal aliens have been rounded up and deported by the French government. So this problem is not unique to the United States. During more than 3 centuries, America has been a beacon of hope for people from around the world. During the 18th and 19th centuries, there was little reason to have a strict immigration policy. However, we did have a policy. And that policy stated that the Congress would have control of immigration affairs, that states give Congress the power to establish a uniform code of naturalization. The immigrants that passed through the halls at Ellis Island at the turn of the century represented many nationalities, but they did enter legally. The Immigration Service inspected all of them. 40% of those legal aliens did return to their homelands within 10 years after suffering hardships. There was no welfare system at that time. Today, we have liberal immigration reformers who want the government structure to assume responsibility for all illegal aliens, and those legal aliens who are not capable of self-sufficiency. Even though illegal immigration poses a serious problem, and has for the last 30 years, Congress has always been slow to act. In 1983, President Reagan stated what had been obvious for many years: we have lost control of our borders. After intense pressure from the general public, the Congress and the President finally took action. They enacted the controversial and very poorly named Immigration Reform Act of 1986, also known as IRCA. That bill was sponsored by Representatives Alan Simpson and Peter Rodino, and was later simply referred to as Simpson-Rodino Act. Bureaucrats attempted to assure everyone that immigration was now under control. These laws would stop the penetration of our borders by illegals and would control the issuing of naturalization to legal immigrants at a controlled rate. No, it did not happen. Instead, the problem increased. During the time that the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, nicknamed IRCA, was being enacted, the United States Border Patrol was severely undermanned, many times under-budgeted, and always unprepared for what was taking place. Many times agents were hard-pressed to even pursue. The Border Patrol is extremely small. Let's take a look at some examples. When you compare the United States Border Patrol with 5,000 men to the police departments of New York City with 27,000 uniformed law enforcement personnel, or the Los Angeles Police Department with 7,400 personnel, you can see that it is a very, very small organization. Let's compare this to our commitment in Bosnia. As you can see, the U.S. Border Patrol, with 5,000 agents, only has about $6 million to operate in their budget this year. Meanwhile, the United States has committed to Bosnia 32,000 troops and over $2 billion to help defend the minuscule borders of a country which we should not even be serving. This does not count support personnel in Macedonia from the United States, nor does it count U.S. personnel in Western Europe or in the United States that also support the effort, nor does it count Allied funding and personnel support. The Immigration Service must monitor the borders of Mexico and Canada. It provides special protection for the remote states of Alaska and Hawaii. It also provides protection to the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Mariana Island chain in the Pacific Ocean, all with only 5,000 men. An impossible mission. The number of arrests dipped in 1987. That was the amnesty year. But it was not due to a lack of illegal aliens crossing into the United States. During the amnesty year, there was a severe cutback in the number of Border Patrol agents available to pursue. Agents were committed that year to the Joint Agency Task Force to intercept drugs and gun running on the border. This was known as Project Alliance. That commitment continues today under a variety of different project names. Other agents were pulled off the line to conduct employer I-9 and sanction instruction under the amnesty program for 6 months. This was done. During another 6-month period during 1986 and 87, Border Patrol agents were sent on riot control to Atlanta, Georgia, and to Oakdale, Louisiana, where the detention centers there were destroyed by illegal aliens. Later, they had to be sent to Miami, Florida, to help quell riots at that detention center. Still more agents were assigned for 1 year, 1987, to the 107 hastily opened amnesty processing centers here in the United States. Other agents were assigned to public relations duties to inform the public about the meaning of the new Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. As a result of the new law being enacted during a time when few agents were available for full-time service, a false sense of success of the program was presented. Yes, apprehensions were down, but the number of illegal aliens entering the country was actually increasing. I personally witnessed this situation firsthand in 1987 while riding as an observer with 2 men Border Patrol units along the border with Texas and Mexico. We were running the Rio Grande River in what's called the Rio Grande Valley, from Brownsville, Texas to Laredo, Texas. On more than one occasion, we encountered heavily armed smuggling convoys. We were reduced to observing from a safe distance because we were either outgunned, out of touch by radio because we were in such a remote area, either backup was too far away or no backup was available. At that time, the U.S. Border Patrol agents were armed with revolvers. They did not have bulletproof vests. Meanwhile, the smugglers carried AR-15s, Uzis, MAC-11s, MAC-10s, Mini-14s, FLN rifles. They also carried body armor and night vision equipment. The pause for inspection is a term used by the Immigration Service for screening aliens who enter this country to determine their eligibility for citizenship or permanent residency. The pause for inspection calls for the detention and deportation of individuals who maybe become wards of the state's welfare system. Other people who can be excluded are fugitives or felons who have already served their time for selected major crimes. Persons who have sworn an allegiance to a foreign country, or organizations that have decided to overthrow the United States, or terrorists, are not allowed to enter and live in the United States. Persons with medical or psychiatric conditions that are considered threats to themselves and to the general public are considered excludable. Persons who enter the United States under false pretenses in order to remain in this country on a semi-permanent or permanent basis, not necessarily with the intent of becoming citizens. All of these elements constitute the pause for inspection. Illegal aliens successfully penetrate our borders and disappear into the hidden subculture of labor exploitation, protection-based extortion, fear, crime, and substandard living conditions. Many immigration agents will tell you off the record that many more enter than are apprehended. Illegals not only break United States law, but they also break Canadian and Mexican law when they enter our country illegally. They do this because to exit those countries, their laws require that you must pass through a port of entry or a port of exit. In 1965, the U.S. Border Patrol arrested 88,000 illegal aliens. The arrest level reached 138,000 in 1976. We topped that figure, and by 1986, the number of detained illegal aliens had pushed to under 2 million. As I mentioned earlier, the arrest did dip during the amnesty year. But remember the 5 reasons I gave you why illegal aliens were not apprehended. Agents were not available to make the arrests and deportations. Let's take a look again at recent history and see how certain events have laid the groundwork for dissolving the border of the United States and Mexico. When we take a look at the August 19th issue, 1985, of U.S. News & World Report, they had a special cover story, and that cover story dealt with the disappearing border. Will the Mexican migration create a nation within the United States of America? All of the Chicano Separatist Party line was presented, including the infamous Plan of Aztlan. Chicanos are people who claim the ancestry of a mythical origins of a race of Aztecs. They claim their ancestors were absorbed by a treaty annexation of the northern part of Mexico by the United States after the Mexican War. This part of the United States, Chicanos claim, is Aztlan, their native homeland. Chicanos claim that the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is invalid and that the southwestern United States should be returned to Mexico, or better yet, made an autonomous Hispanic, Spanish-speaking nation within the United States. When we look at the map, we see this takes in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and a small portion of Oklahoma. All this is considered illegally occupied territory of the nation of Aztlan. Aztlan was a creation of a poet by the name of Arulista. He made up this new nation by drafting a new mythology from unsubstantiated Aztec folklore. It describes a symbolic Chicano homeland within the boundaries of the United States of America. Aztlan, the big lie or myth, was conceived solely for the purpose of establishing a sense of political action. This Aztlan concept was initially presented at the first Chicano Youth Conference held in Denver, Colorado in March of 1969. Over 5,000 delegates attended that conclave. Wheels were starting to turn to raise a generation of political activists, malleable foot soldiers, and leaders for the Chicano cause. They were protesting the Vietnam War, supporting farm workers' unions, aligning themselves with the civil rights movement. Other delegates were pushing for armed rebellion in cooperation with the American Indian movement and the Black Power movement. Shades of Northern Ireland, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, and many other countries where demand for ethnic homelands has led to civil war. As citizens of Aztlan, Chicanos claim that they are the original inhabitants of the American Southwest and claim to be ancestors of the extinct Aztec race. Thus, the land is theirs. Well, this must come as quite a surprise to the Navajos, Comanches, Apaches, and other great Indian tribes of the American Southwest. There is no archaeological evidence to prove that the Aztecs ever came near the southwestern United States. The Aztec civilization of Aztlan was actually located in central Mexico. The citizens of Aztlan also claim the title of mestizo. This means that they also claim European blood from the Spaniards who colonized Mexico and much of the rest of the Western world. This makes their claims of ethnic indigenousness a joke. In August of 1986, CBS News correspondent Bill Moyers did a white paper report. This one-hour program was called One River, One Country. And it was about an emerging nation in the southwestern United States. The Plan Espiritual de Aztlan claims, again, of the invalidity of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was presented. Aztlan was never mentioned, but a map of it was presented during the program as a new emerging nation. The concept was presented wrapped in the folds and banners of bilingualism, multiculturalism, and expanding new international trade agreements. During the program, you were never told once that the people being interviewed who supported the breakup of the United States were sanctuary workers and members of APIZO, El Paso Citizens Organized for People Service, COPS, People's Organized for People Service in San Antonio, Valley Interfaith, Rio Grande Valley, the Texas Interfaith Network. All of these organizations were established by the Industrial Areas Foundation based in Huntington, New York. The Industrial Areas Foundation is best known for assisting Cesar Chavez in establishing the United Farm Workers Union in California. Alinsky helped provide the organizational structure for that and many other organizations, such as ACORN. Chavez was a coat and tie executive for many years for the Alinsky organization before he took on the garb of the poor campesino to become a martyr for the Farm Workers Union project. Anyone who remembers the wide media coverage that Chavez received at this time would remember that Ethel and Robert Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King, and Stokely Carmichael, now known as Kwame Ture, and other high-profile individuals came to assist him in his organizing. Why did this take place? Well, what was happening is, after many years of working as a political bloc organizer, he was now calling in his political chips. What many people do not realize is that the Industrial Areas Foundation has been involved in social engineering through community-based organizations throughout the United States and Puerto Rico for the past 40 years. Its early funding was from the Midas Muffler Company, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Presbyterian Church. It has received over the years additional funding from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the United Methodist Commission on Religion and Race, and the Episcopal Coalition for Human Needs. These and many other religious and private foundations have contributed to their success. Saul Alinsky was the founder of the Industrial Areas Foundation and one of the early practitioners of liberation theology here in the United States. Liberation theology is the philosophy that requires the teachings of Marxism, socialism, and pacifism be accepted as being morally good, and they should be recognized. The creation of a democratic, non-hierarchical, classless society incorporates these ideals. This is supported by perverting Holy Scriptures. It demands a denial of the right to property and to a reasonable profit. Violence as class warfare and revolution are permissible to create an atmosphere for political change. The late Saul Alinsky was the son of Russian immigrant parents. He grew up in Chicago. He was a criminologist by profession, a professional radical by choice. During Spain's Civil War, he raised funds in the United States for the Communist International Brigade, sometimes known as the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. He organized the meatpackers in Chicago into the Back of the Yards Council, or gang, prior to World War II. During World War II, Alinsky worked on special projects for the United States Departments of Labor, State, and Treasury. How he obtained a security clearance has never been disclosed, and neither has the nature of the work that he provided. He was jailed frequently beginning in the 1950s for his confrontational style after having formed a variety of community-based organizations. This is one of his books, Rules for Radicals. This and Reveille for Radicals have become the blueprint for social engineering and social change here in the United States. Alinsky claimed that he would conduct radical social change in the United States by using the funding, respectability, and structure of churches. He died in 1972. Since his program has come online here in the United States, mainstream liberation theology has arrived from Latin America. The two textbooks that are used by community organizers at the Mexican American Cultural Center are Alinsky's books, Rules for Radicals and Reveille for Radicals. Liberation theology was developed in Latin America by Leonardo Boff and Gustavo Gutierrez. The last 15 years, they have been teaching their style of liberation theology in San Antonio at the Mexican American Cultural Center. Also teaching at the Mexican American Cultural Center are organizers from the Industrial Areas Foundation. The Mexican American Cultural Center was founded in San Antonio by Catholic Archbishop Patricio Flores, a board member of the Industrial Areas Foundation from Huntington, New York, a member of Padres, a left-tilted social action priest organization. He's a pro-sanctuary advocate, frequent visitor to Cuba, and was arrested and deported as a speaker at a secret communist convention in Riobamba, Ecuador. Their students have not only included U.S. clergy and lay people of all faiths, but also people from the Philippines, South Africa, Northern Ireland, and many other political hotspots. A regular visitor before his assassination was Bishop Oscar Romero from El Salvador. The following books, A Theology of Liberation, We Drink from Our Own Wells, A Chicano Theology, The Power of the Poor in History, and The Way of the Cross, The Way of Social Justice, are used to train new community action leaders. These are just a few of the texts that the MAC uses to train these people to form social action cells through the concept of basic Christian communities, BCCs, Comunidades de Base. The majority of these books are politically tilted to the left and were printed by Orbis Press, the publishing arm of the Maryknoll Order, headquartered in Maryknoll, New York. The director of Orbis, when these books were printed, was Father Miguel de Scotto. He later became the foreign minister of the Sandinista Marxist government cabinet in Nicaragua. It's no coincidence that the state coordinator in Texas of the Industrial Areas Foundation and the Texas Interfaith Network, Ernesto Cortez, has also been an instructor in community organizing at the Mexican American Cultural Center. He has taught there at the same time that Leonardo Boff and Gustavo Gutierrez have been presenting their instruction. At the Mexican American Cultural Center in San Antonio and similar named training centers throughout the United States, you see a cross-pollination of all of these social justice groups as they work to attack social problems with a socialist answer. They believe that taking from the haves and giving to the have-nots is the answer to all of our problems. They believe that each should receive according to his needs. They blame this nation's constitutional democratic republic form of government for all of the world's problems. Young and middle-aged white professionals are targeted for conversion to these movements by creating a sense of guilt in them for their individual success and cultural heritage. The MAC also exports its training through lecturers, publications, and social action groups that travel throughout the world. Let me give you some of the titles of other books that they use to perpetuate the balkanization of the United States. The Backyard Revolution, Understanding the New Citizens' Revolt. The 9 Nations of America. Occupied America, A History of the Chicanos. A Gringo Manual on How to Handle Mexicans. Los Derechos de los Extranjeros, The Rights of the Illegals, and hundreds more titles. How do these community organizers plan? What do they plan to do, I should say? Well, one of their primary objectives is to create the largest minority voting bloc the United States has ever seen for the elections of the year 2000. The secondary goal is the dramatic change of immigration law in favor of increasing quotas, further expansion of entitlements for all classes of aliens, and more amnesty programs. The tertiary target is the challenging of the legality of existing United States land treaties, land grants, further expansion of affirmative action, supporting treaties that disproportionately favor third world nations over the interest of the United States. The fourth and final aim of the fringe element is to promote racial division and armed revolution to create ethnic homelands. Less than half of all the voting eligible citizens in this country vote in national elections, and only about a third vote in local and state elections. It's easy to see that the states with the largest number of electoral votes also have the largest number of illegal aliens. They also have the largest number of newly naturalized citizens under the 1987 amnesty program. Harnessing this political power could have tremendous impact on America's future. One of the ways to inflate the voting bloc numbers was to launch the highly controversial sanctuary movement and to push for the multifaceted alien amnesty program. A concerted effort was made to count all illegal aliens in the 1980 and the 1990 census so that electoral vote apportionment would shift to Texas, California, New Mexico, or I should say New York, and Florida. The reapportionment resulted in these states. We have the states of Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia losing representation in Congress as a direct result of illegal alien immigration. The census is very important. It not only determines apportionment of electoral votes, but it also is used to determine representation in Congress, state, and local government. It sets the boundaries for voting districts. Federal and state funding for projects relies on accurate census enumeration. The sanctuary people volunteered to be declared qualified designated entities, QDEs, by the United States Immigration Service. Over 1,000 of them are now operating here in the United States. They process aliens seeking adjustment of status, asylum, and citizenship. A case of the fox left to guard the henhouse. They also strongly support the motor voter registration program, which is being implemented throughout the United States, which is very easily abused. They have established voter registration and education organizations funded by major nonprofit foundations and corporations. They obtain government contracts to operate accredited schools to conduct citizenship training and to give the new Citizens Project exam. Finally, they are calling for the right to vote for non-citizens here in the United States. A precedence for non-citizen voting has already taken place in Tacoma Park, Maryland, where a referendum was passed on November 5th, 1991. That action opened the door for illegal aliens and resident aliens to vote in local elections. This serves as a precedent, which could be providing a precedent for court challenges to similar restrictions on alien voting in the future. The sanctuary movement began in the United States in 1981 in Miami, Florida. It was started at a conference where a Bill of Rights for illegal aliens was being drafted. That's right, you heard me, a Bill of Rights for illegal aliens. In an attempt to mislead the general populace, the document introduced the term undocumented workers to replace the legal term for illegal aliens. It's no coincidence that at the same time, the director of the Immigration Naturalization Service, Leonel Castillo, began to use the same phrase, undocumented worker, in place of illegal alien. Attending the conference were members of the following: the Haitian Refugee Center of Miami, the African People's Socialist Party, the Southern Organizing Committee for Economy and Environmental Justice, the International Coordinating Committee for the Protection of Undocumented Workers, the National Lawyers Guild, the Socialist Workers Party, the National Filipino Immigration Rights Organization, veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, the United Farm Workers Unions of Texas, California, Florida, and Arizona. Working closely with these groups was Peter Shea, a green card-holding South African attorney who has always been associated with the most controversial immigration cases tried here in the United States. He has used federal funds from the Legal Services Administration to seek judgments in favor of his clients versus the U.S. government's immigration service. Only in America could an individual who's not a citizen get money from the government to sue the government. This coalition claimed that it was formed as a grassroots response to the abuse of illegal aliens. In truth, it was highly organized. They published for the first time a 1-inch thick, single-spaced, 400-page listing of organizations and individuals who supported their cause. They were preparing to take on the U.S. Immigration Service and the United States of America. Here are some of the books that were sold at some of the meetings that they conducted. A book on how to conduct sanctuary operations and how to recruit clergy into the operation, sold as a package deal along with Guerrilla Warfare by Che Guevara. And yet they claimed that theirs was not a revolutionary-based political organization. Early ties were made to the ACLU, the Mexican-American Legal Defense Fund, MALDEF, the National Lawyers Guild, and also working closely with them, the United Farm Workers Unions throughout the American Southwest. This effort to circumvent immigration law used 3 manuals based on liberation theology to educate the rank and file. The first of these was Sanctuary, Resource Guide to Understanding and Participating in the Central American Refugee Struggle. The second was Solidarity with the People of Nicaragua. Third, Sanctuary, the New Underground Railroad. In the late 1980s, I attended a training session in Houston, Texas for top-level sanctuary leaders. One of the key speakers was Leonel Castillo, the former director of the U.S. Immigration Naturalization Service under President Carter. They were presenting this scenario, the Plan of Aztlán. The following tests were some of the many available that day from the Chicago Interreligious Task Force in Central America, an organizer's nuts and bolts. Public Sanctuary for El Salvadorians and Guatemalan refugees. This training manual used to approach clergy to participate in the program. The official sanctuary line has always been that sanctuary is not breaking the law. Yet on page 2 of their manual, they underline this phrase themselves: make sure that you make it clear to all of those that participate, that is, those wanting to join the sanctuary movement, that sponsorship, that means hiding or aiding illegal aliens, involves breaking the law. The second manual was used to recruit other clergy into the program. It was entitled Crisis in El Salvador, Organizer's Handbook of Witness, Study, and Action, produced by the Universal Unitarian Center in Boston. It contained quotes from Scripture and explained how to use them to support liberation theology and the sanctuary movement. It also had information on how to conduct vigils, letter writing campaigns, how to organize protest marches, and how to lobby Congress. The third manual used was presented by the National Lawyers Guild, their immigration project, Central American Refugee Defense Fund Visa Denial Manual. It contained everything you needed to know before you went to trial. One of the most important chapters was entitled, What to Do When the FBI Comes Knocking. And remember, they weren't breaking the law. So why did they need to know that? Similar literature was also passed out to illegal aliens, and this is one of them. It's called El Otro Lado, the other side of the river. Again, it introduced the Plan of Aztlán. It's your land, and we're going to help you take it back. It also contained information on how to get on food stamps, free education, how to avoid deportation, how to seek asylum if you were arrested and prepared for deportation. It provided all the information you needed to bypass the legal system. In the Far East, a book entitled What You Need to Know About Life in America is available for purchase. It contains over 36 pages of a step-by-step guide on how to get on SSI and other government assistance. On the internet, you can use your home computer to get into literally hundreds of immigration support groups. Attorneys, information sources are available to help play the INS game. The Complete Guide to Immigration and Successful Living in the United States, available at pressline.com.usa/access. You will find everything you need to know to operate on a worldwide immigration basis. It's offered for sale online. It contains many topics. The immigration law section, includes samples of all of the latest U.S. immigration naturalization documents. This book, they quote, has been edited by experts in English as a second language, as well as immigrants, to assure ease of understanding and utilization. Getting back to Mr. Leonel Castillo, he was responsible for setting the stage for the massive illegal alien immigration that we now see here in the United States. As the director of the U.S. Immigration Naturalization Service, he did all he could by cutting budgets, reducing manpower, and changing directives and regulations dealing with immigration. He rendered his knowledge of the inner workings of the INS available to the sanctuary movement. He did this in an attempt to circumvent and change immigration law and its perception by the general public. After leaving the INS, he became the director of sanctuary services in the Houston area. And today, he is the director of Castillo Enterprises, working on both sides of the United States-Mexico border. He is a frequent speaker and mentor to Aztlan groups throughout the American Southwest. In the 1960s, an attempt was made to create a violent uprising in this country. Through the efforts of the Black Panthers, the Black Power movement, the Brown Berets de Aztlan, MAYO, which is the Mexican-American Youth Organization, the MECHA, with the Movement Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlan, student movement, La Raza Unida, United Race, Barrio Unido, the United Neighborhood, all of these ethnic-based revolutionary groups were attempting to seize political power by force. They finally came to the realization that the United States wasn't ready for that yet. As the number of non-citizens and newly naturalized citizen population growth takes place, they are now coming back out of the woodwork. Using the flag of multiculturalism and multilingualism, they are stirring the pot of ethnic hatred. They are demanding reparations and establishment of ethnic homelands, as I mentioned earlier. They are demanding ethnic homelands for Latin Americans, Africans, Asians, and Native Americans. They have managed to get universities and public schools to cave into their demands for cultural studies. These groups have established networks of tutors, after-hours mentors, summer companions to volunteer their services to educate young children. They are working in daycare centers as well as private and public schools to help instill their version of history and revolutionary action into young minds. From kindergarten through university, the Aztlan movement is winning new and potentially violent recruits. In and on their headquarters and in public marches, they carry religious icons, but they also carry portraits of Che Guevara, Mao, Lenin, Marx, Fidel Castro, Emiliano Zapata, and Pancho Villa. These self-styled ethnic pride organizations are highly inflammatory, creating racist attacks on Americanism and anyone of the white race especially. The very tactics of name-calling, baiting, and character assassination that they accuse gringos, Anglo-white Saxons, they carry to the point of revolution. Here are some examples of the hatred being perpetuated by Chicano leaders. We are a hunted people. Why do they come after us? Because we are fighting as a new mestizo nation, not to be conquered. We are millions. Theirs is an aging white America. They are not having babies. You've got to be ready to govern. Aztlan is our land, and we are here again to take it. Gringos stole the land of the territorial minority, us. And we have a right to build our homeland. We have got to eliminate the gringo. And what I mean is that if worse comes to worse, we have to kill him. Jose Angel Gutierrez, Director of Mexican-American Studies at the University of Texas, Arlington, founder of La Raza Unida political party of Texas. Let's get away from quoting Gandhi and let's be Zapata, the Mexican revolutionary leader. We need to be in the attack mode. Arturo Montes, LULAC, League of Latin American Citizens. Remarks on the death in the line of duty of Border Patrol agent Luis Santiago. We are glad that this migra pig, border patrolman, is dead. All migra pigs deserve death, and as far as we care, all the migra pigs should be killed, every last one of them. This from an editorial in Voz Fronturesa, a student publication at the University of California at San Diego. Member of the ultra-left-wing Chicano Press Association, Guerreros, I should say, de la Pluma, guerrillas, warriors of the pen. And finally, the streets will run red with the blood of tyrants, those who have murdered us for so long. There will be no stay of execution. Remarks by Brown Beret member Agustin Cededa at the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors meeting this past year. Currently, federally mandated requirements for multiculturalism and multilingualism in our schools are driving local school districts deeply into debt. It's crushing the melting pot assimilation process and displacing it with ethnic tribalism, which is hostile to patriotism. School districts are hard-pressed to find materials and teachers for these programs. They have been forced to seek both overseas, including trips to Cuba. More than 100+ languages are required under bilingual education here in the United States. And what happens is, many times, materials and teachers are non-existent or of inferior quality to meet the demands of the American curriculum. School districts have been forced to obtain provisional teacher certification of unqualified individuals from within the ethnic communities. When all efforts fail to provide mandated multicultural, multilingual programs, schools face the risk of being sued or having their funds cut. California currently must pay $3.6 billion, that's B, billion dollars to educate illegal alien children in over 100 different languages. Florida spends $136 million for illegal immigration in 118 languages. Texas shells out over $30 million to educate illegal alien children in over 70 languages. New York must provide bilingual education to students from 120 countries at the cost of $39 million. All of us must help pay for this type of education. This does not include the cost of multicultural and multilingual special education services or construction of new schools. Schools involved in multilingual, multicultural, and politically correct education are further burdened by having to issue report cards and conducting PTA meetings, parent, student, and teacher conferences in up to several different languages, several dozen different languages, just in one school district. Ironically, the majority of the third world bilingual students and their parents are functionally illiterate in their mother tongue. Studies conducted by the General Accounting Office, the GAO, indicate that newly arrived bilingual students and their parents from underdeveloped countries have little or no educational experience. Those that do, the highest level, 6th grade. This data was contained in a report entitled Limited English Proficiency, a Growing and Costly Educational Challenge Facing Many School Districts. This was dated January 1st, 1994, and was presented to the U.S. Senate Committee on Labor and Human Resources. The Chicano movement insists on bilingualism, which is a senseless demand. They themselves conduct nearly all of their meetings, rallies, and demonstrations in English. They publish the majority of their publications in English. When they do use Spanish, it's usually in a way to create a racial slur. Using Spanish is a contradiction of their claim of being descendants of the Aztecs. Spanish was the language of the conquering Europeans, people they claim to despise. If they want to keep true to their manifestos, they should be speaking Indian languages based on the extinct Aztec tongue. It's no wonder, with the wasted resources and time devoted to multilingualism and multiculturalism and political correctness, that this country continues to fall behind the world in academic standards. The teaching of someone's foreign ancestral cultural traditions and language are the responsibility of the home, the religious institutions, and fraternal and private institutions. Strictly academic study of language and culture should be encouraged, but it should never be federally mandated or funded as a political tool to polarize. Multiculturalism is even pervading our court system. 27-year-old Pang Vang raped his girlfriend in Wisconsin as part of a Laotian courtship ritual. His defense attorney was able to convince the jury that he was a victim of tradition. He spent only 60 days in jail. In another case, a man murdered his wife in New York with a hammer. His defense was that her infidelity brought shame to his traditional Chinese psyche, which demanded her death. He was probated on the charge. Finally, a Japanese woman in California attempted suicide with her 2 small children. She did this by jumping into the Pacific Ocean. Her reason? Her husband's affair had caused her to lose face. The children died, she lived, and was granted 5 years probation on this offense. If you or I were to commit any of these crimes, I doubt that we would have received such light sentences. The cultural norms defense applies only to foreign cultures. But we do have a simple solution to many of these problems. And what are these solutions? Well, first, we need to make English the official language of this country. As we continue to perpetuate multilingualism, we continue to dissolve the unity of this country. One of the key factors to draw us together will be making English the official language. Next, we need to overhaul our stifling tax system. Not only personal tax, but we're also looking at capital gains tax, providing more incentive for companies not to move overseas or not to bring in green card workers into the United States to replace American workers. We need to eliminate welfare giveaway programs. We must also focus on Border Patrol efforts, increasing the Border Patrol maybe by 300%, so that we have more agents available to apprehend and deport illegal aliens. We need to also end government grants to organizations that are providing support for illegal immigration. We also need to eliminate the tax-exempt status of foundations that are involved in issues that are counter to the success of our way of government. And finally, we need to stop all foreign aid. Foreign aid provides the fuel for the engine for illegal immigration by encouraging and assisting governments which do not allow individual growth and development of free government and enterprise. You as an individual have certain responsibilities, and these are those responsibilities. You must register and vote. Vote in every election in which you are eligible. Educate yourself. Know what the issues are. Know who the individuals are who are running for office and what their political stand is. Join the John Birch Society because it has the information available on current and past issues, the background and the history. It has some of the best publications on current political issues. And finally, we need to make government accountable to you. And you can do this, again, by joining the society and having access to trim bulletins and distributing them whenever someone comes to seek re-election or to visit with his constituency. Nothing gets the attention of a politician faster than having his voting record exposed to the public. And that's what we do when we distribute a trim bulletin. If we do all of these simple actions, we will return our government to its official status as being a representative government of the people. We must always work, we must always be vigilant to the needs. Together, we can work to keep the United States of America as a shining example of freedom, law, and order to the rest of the world. Never forget that the price of freedom, as I said earlier, is eternal vigilance. We must work hard for less government more individual responsibility, your responsibility. And with God's help, we will have a better world. Thank you very much.